So, hey everyone, this is Steven Spender with ideaXme, and today we are talking with filmmaker Jordan Horowitz. Hello, Jordan.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, first question. Who are you?
Well, like you said, my name is Jordan Horowitz. I'm a filmmaker. I write, direct, and produce movies. I have two feature films at the moment. One is a documentary called Angel of Nanjing that was released last year, and I have a new film called Painless, which is a narrative film that I wrote and directed, which is finishing its festival run now, and should hopefully be coming out soon.
Great, great. So, let me just go back to the beginning real quick. So, where are you from originally?
Originally from Stamford, Connecticut.
Okay,
But I gotta say, I moved around a lot after high school. I kind of left Stanford after high school and never really went back.
okay.
I've spent time in LA, in Colorado, in Boston, in China, and here in New York, where I've been for, God, like the last 15 years.
Right, right. And how did you get into filmmaking? How did that all start?
It was definitely something I always wanted to do my whole life. A friend of mine reminded me not long ago of this time when we were kids running around with this garbage VHS camera and this super hot light that goes on top, filming a Christmas Carol for whatever reason, and then the light
Yeah,
like touched my head and like singed, like burned this huge
burned.
mark in my
Yeah.
face because it used to be really hot back then. But yeah, it's something I've always been passionate about and wanted to do. I didn't know if I could do it, until college when I went to film school in Boulder, Colorado, and
Mm.
finally started getting my hands on real film equipment and seeing if I actually was able to tell a story, which fortunately I think I am. I have to say it's funny though, like today a kid would never have that problem. A kid an 8-year old kid's got an iPhone with an amazing HD camera and editing software built into it, and they can figure out before they're even in middle school if they're able to be a filmmaker or not.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it?
In my day, you kind of had to wait for it a little bit, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's something I've always been really passionate about. So.
So after you finished film school, did you want to be like a writer director, or did you have a path that you wanted to go into?
Well, I always wanted to be a writer director. I've always writing and directing shorts. I moved to So my thesis film in college did really well and won a bunch of awards. And I moved to LA right after film school. And on the basis of that film, I showed it to this DP who was in the process of, he was gearing up to shoot a feature. And he saw it. He's like, yeah, he's like, why don't you come work for me in the camera department? Which I thought camera department's probably a path to directing. I didn't really know much. You only know so much when you're that age. But I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good path. And I really wanted to work on real film sets, so it was great. The whole thing was shot on 35 millimeter. I was loading film, racking focus. The thing I love and miss most about the camera department is I was also doing the slates, and as the person doing the slates, I was the closest person to the actors, and I was there for every take.
Yeah.
And it's funny because crew members traditionally, a lot of crew members aren't really into that. Like they get really bored. They don't really care about that part. But that's the part I was most excited about. So
Mm.
I would just stand there. I would make sure I was never in an actor's line of sight, but I would just stand there and look at every single take and what the director would say to them and how they would make adjustments and just
Hmm.
just really study. I felt like my work started. There was all this work I had to do in the camera department to get us to that point where they called action. But then I felt like my real education started once I heard action and before I heard cut. That's when I was like doing my own personal work, and I
Right.
just really really enjoyed that experience.
Mm. And so you worked in the camera department there. When did you have your first sort of taste of directing?
Well, I mean, it's hard. I mean, really,
Or
realistically, I was in the camera department for a while, working on a bunch of indie films,
mm,
most of which nothing happened with, and basically, I learned a lot of what I learned was like things to avoid, like bad directing.
right.
But I was always making my own short films on the side, and whatever money I had left over from paying my rent was putting it towards a short film.
Mm,
So I was teaching myself, and Um, after 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 a while, I built up a really good portfolio. I helped a friend of mine start a company in Denver, doing a lot of music videos and TV commercials. He was doing all the producing, I was doing all the directing and editing and shooting, and then I sent my reel to MTV in New York, and they loved it. They hired me to be a producer, editor, shooter.
Hmm.
So I moved to New York, which is a city I always wanted to live in. I was more excited about being in New York than LA at the time because I felt like the types of films that I wanted to make were more so coming out of New York. So I moved there, and I was a producer at MTV for a while, and I knew pretty quickly that I needed to make the jump into making my own feature films.
Hmm.
So I basically just saved as much money as I could, made as many contacts as I could, and then I'd say my first professional directing gig was when I left MTV. I went off I moved to China to make this documentary called Angel of Nanjing.
Oh wow! So you actually, you relocated for the film. You didn't
Yeah, yeah.
relocate and then do the
I was
film.
at MTV. A friend of mine showed me this small article on some whatever website about this guy in China who had been saving people from committing suicide by jumping off a bridge at this bridge that's a very popular place to do it. And I was so inspired by what he was doing, and I was like really hungry for a project. And I was like, man, like I never considered myself a documentary filmmaker. Like I always wanted to write and direct, but I was like, man, this story is just so compelling. Like I gotta
Hmm.
do this. So I was really intimidated to just get up and move to China. Like I knew nothing about living in China. Like how do you even do that? What is the life like? How do I even get around?
Yeah.
So I recruited a filmmaking buddy of mine, Frank, and I was like, and I knew he was really hungry for a project. And I was like, look, man, I'm going to China to tell this story. You're in or you're out. And he looked at it and he's like, yeah, he's like, let's do this. So we
Hmm.
kind of pooled our money, pooled our resources, and we just, on a dime, literally just moved to China and like figured our way out around there.
Wow. And what's the man's name? Who
Chensa.
now did you speak with him before you went? Had you made some kind of arrangement, or did you just go and?
Well, we spoke to him through a translator who wasn't that good. So I would say the communication was pretty poorly presented to him.
Okay.
We found this blog online that was all in Chinese, and I
Hmm.
had a Chinese friend look at it. And I'm like, what is this? And she's like, oh, it's like a blog, like a diary for when he saves somebody. He writes about it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, that's interesting. And she's like, oh, did you know there's a phone number there for depressed people? They can call him and he'll talk to them. And I was like, call him, like tell him I'm a filmmaker and I want to come out and film him. And she called him, she told him that, and he's like, yeah, okay. But I don't think it was clear what we were trying to do. I think he's used to getting a lot of press and a lot of interviews for like a couple days or whatever. I
Hmm.
don't think he realized I was going to go out there and film him for a year.
Is that
And
how
I
long it took? Did you film for a whole year?
Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't every day, but it was on and off. It was when things were going on, when he was at the bridge. There was definitely lots of downtime. I had to leave the country every couple months to get a new visa.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it lasted a year. And I think by the end of it, he's just like, why are you still filming me? Like, what is going on here?
He seems quite comfortable in front of the camera. I don't know if that was
Yeah.
always the case, but he seemed really like at ease and
Yeah.
natural.
No, he is. He's done a ton of press. At this point, he's done an insane amount of press, and he knows it's helping his cause, and he just doesn't. He just ignores it. Like it doesn't bother him at all. He's very comfortable around it, and he's great. What's so great about him? One of the things that's so great about him is a lot of Chinese people are very uncomfortable around cameras.
Mm.
They have to be very careful about what they say. There's a lot of censorship, and
Yeah.
he's very good about just getting people to be like, no, 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 they're with me. Like, just talk like you're talking to me, and he
Yeah.
gets a lot of people to just open up. So,
Yeah.
got us some great sound bites for sure.
Did you guys become friends, or was it more of a working relationship? Or
We did a Skype interview recently for this program called Now This News, and they had us and Chen all talking through Skype with a live audience, and they asked Chen the same question. He was like, he's like, we don't. It's hard for us to understand each other because of the language barrier. He's like, but we
Yeah.
definitely went through this intense experience together, and he's like, I definitely consider them brothers.
Mm.
I think he's right. It's like this bonding experience that will always be there, and
Yeah.
no matter how much time passes, like it'll never change. It'll never go away.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful film. I loved it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
I just want to ask you a question. What do you think motivates him? What's driving him to do that? To help and save people.
Yeah, I've asked him that a few times. A lot of people assume, a lot of reporters that were always trying to assume that he must have been suicidal at one point in his life.
Yeah.
And actually, he said that's not true. He said the real reason is he's an immigrant to the city. He had been reading about, it's very difficult for people that migrated to the city for work. And he had read about on the news all the staggering number of people who were killing themselves on this bridge and how the majority of them were also migrants to the city. And he felt like he could relate to these people. And he just, also, the other part of that is his grandmother, who we were fortunate enough to meet before she passed away. We were the first Americans she ever met.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was this very selfless person.
Yeah.
She was kind of like the unofficial town mediator in this little village where they grew up. And we went there on my birthday, actually. It's this very, very tiny village. Like I said, nobody had ever seen a foreigner. And whenever there was like a dispute, she would like take Chen and like go mediate the dispute. So she was like this very giving, selfless person.
Yeah.
He got that from her. He felt like he knew there was a problem. He felt like he had to do something. And what's most, to me, the greatest thing about Chen's ability is he's not professionally trained in any way. He doesn't know the technical right things to say to these people, as you probably saw in the movie, but he's one of them. It's so easy for him to identify with what they're going through and to communicate with them on like a real personal level, that he's able to get these people to listen to him and to respond to him. So
So you were there for a year shooting that and on and off.
Yeah.
So did you, once you got the footage, did you come back to the States and do the editing there, or did you do that in China, or?
Well, it was over the course of 2 trips. I did come back to the States for a couple months in between. And I took the footage we had shot back, started assembling it, went back to China. We didn't do much editing in China because the issue we kept running into is we didn't understand any of the footage, right? So we needed to get everything translated.
Yeah.
So we had at one point my apartment in China was like an office. There was like 6 people sitting at my kitchen table translating, looking at scenes. I had one guy who could do a little video editing who was just subtitling the footage to make it easier.
Yeah.
But we had 100 hours, so we had stacks and stacks of pages of translation. And it wasn't until it was actually months after I got back to America where like we were getting everything back that I was able to really start figuring out how to edit this. And at that point, it was just like I said, over 100 hours of raw footage. And usually you try to edit as you go, but we couldn't. And it was overwhelming. We were just kind of like, what do we do with all this? It's insane.
Yeah.
There's three other movies I can cut with that footage, you know?
Crazy. So when you were shooting it at the time, you didn't have a translator. There was...
Most of the time we had a translator. A lot of times, but a lot of times, A, their English wasn't that great, or B, it was like, he was like, we tried to get the gist of what was happening, but he couldn't give us any specifics because there's too much chaos, too much, and a lot of times, like for example, on the bridge, the way it would work is Chen had a motorbike, and he would ride up and down the bridge, and me or my partner would take turns following him. And the translator would stay behind. So like if something happened, I would keep my distance. You know, it was a lot of like very long lenses from a very far distance.
Yeah.
Chen had a wireless mic on him, and I would just film it. But so obviously I knew I could get a sense of what was happening, but I had no idea what they were actually saying to each other. And sometimes it wasn't until months later I'm sitting in my apartment in New York watching the scene, and I actually see like the actual language that he said to her, and I'm like, that's hysterical, or that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like I can't believe that's what you said. Like because in my head it was something completely different.
Crazy. Wow.
Yeah, it's funny because there's times where like two people are talking and it seems like this really deep, meaningful thing. So I'm filming it like really tightly and beautifully.
Yeah.
And I'll ask the translator after, like, oh, what were they talking about? And he's like, oh, they were just arguing about a parking space. And then other times, like, it seemed like so blasé that my camera was sitting on the table, and the translator's like, why didn't you film that? It was this great conversation about suicide. And I'm like, dude, you gotta tell me that.
Yeah. Well, it turned out great anyway.
It wasn't without its challenges.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Wow. Nice soundtrack too. Who?
Oh yeah, David Magellan. He did both my movies actually. My composer. He's amazing.
Yeah. They're really powerful. So you did that. So that uh, when was that released?
It was released in last year in 2016. The previous year it had this really great festival run. And the great thing about this film is it keeps getting these like second, third, fourth rounds of like attention. Then now this news piece that came out got a huge amount of attention earlier this year. It got like 23 million views. George Takei tweeted something about it, and then just this Sunday, This American Life, the NPR show, they did a big thing about Chen. So it keeps like generating like a lot of buzz. So that's great.
How did you feel about the final cut? The film?
Great. There was one thing that I didn't like. We had this amazing scene in there that we actually it was done with the help of this Japanese company who happened to be there doing some stuff at the time. So we had to license it from them since they technically shot it.
Okay.
And they agreed to it. We paid them money to be able to use it in festivals. Like we did everything by the book, and under the agreement that they would then license it to us for release. And it's a nothing scene in and of itself, but it perfectly completes the storyline. It's the scene where you saw the movie, so you know where the boy that couldn't get a job, he gets a job at the factory.
Yeah.
So it's the scene you saw in the cut I sent you where the boy disappears and he has to find him. He goes to his village and nobody knows what happened to him.
Right.
That scene's not actually in the theatrical release because the company at the last minute decided they didn't want to release it to us for reasons they never disclosed. So we had to pull it out at the last minute. We'd already mixed the audio, and David, my composer, did this beautiful song over it. And unfortunately, that whole thing had to go. And like I said, it's not a big deal. Like it's a very small moment in and of itself, but it completed the storyline in a really meaningful way. And it's just one of those heartbreaking things to have to see go when it was so perfect,
Yeah.
But other than that, I got to say I'm very happy with the way it came out. I mean, it was two guys who knew nothing about the culture or language, had no money at all. Like the only reason we were able to pay for that is because I gave up my apartment in New York, and the money I had saved for rent paid for everything, and same with Frank.
Yeah.
And considering like that was who we were, that we were able to pull it off, I think is an accomplishment. So,
oh, definitely. So that happened.
Yeah.
Then how did you? So let's talk about Painless.
Okay.
So when did you start writing that?
A long time ago, probably
Yeah.
before I went to China. Yeah. I had the idea for that one for a long time.
So that like long time meaning like 10 years or?
I don't want to put a date on it, but definitely while I was at MTV
Right.
working, I had this idea. I mean, at first there was just this idea in the back of my mind, and I had no idea how to tell it. It was more like I had an idea for this character, and I just didn't know what to do with it. I kind of, while I was in China, I think is when I did the bulk of the writing, because we had a lot of downtime, a lot of like time where there's nothing to do but wait for files to be translated and transcoded, and I would just sit there and brainstorm this idea to death. And then so it was basically when I got back from China for my final trip that I think I had it all fleshed out at that point. I had all my characters, and I knew the big plot points, and that's when I really locked myself in a room and was like, I need to write this right now.
Did you enjoy the writing process?
No, I didn't. I'm not a natural writer. I'm not Stephen King, who can just sit there and bang out 10 books at a time. Writing is a very tedious and slow process for me. It's something that I enjoy the accomplishment of, and when you get into these moments when you write. Actually, I was listening to this thing with Aaron Sorkin recently, who I love, and he said that he has writer's block like 90% of the. I'm paraphrasing, but like the majority of the time he has writer's block, and it's only very few moments where he actually doesn't have writer's block. And I kind of agree with him, and I definitely see his point. It's like there are these moments where it just starts flowing and clicking, and you're like, whoa, I just wrote 20 pages. How the hell did that happen? That's so amazing. And getting to the end is like the best feeling in the world. But the process of getting there, especially for someone like me, is very difficult. It doesn't come naturally. And especially this movie, Painless, it's for those of you who don't know, it's the story of this guy, Henry Long, who has a real medical condition where he can't feel physical pain. And because of that, he's very cautious and protective because he doesn't want to be injured and not know it. And he's very closed off from society. He's kind of like afraid of people, and he's kind of like on this quest to try and find a cure so that he can feel normal. And because of that, there was an awful lot of, as you know, there's a ton of science and medical stuff that had to go into the project. And I have no background in either of those fields. So that was challenging. I did a ton of research. I actually hired 3 science advisors while I was writing the script to help me with some of the science. I had science advisors on set at all times. There's a ton of things like formulas that are being written on boards and research he's doing on computers and things in the lab that they're doing. And we always had a science advisor. We always had a medical advisor whenever there was like a medical scene going on. So it's crazy. But actually, I have to say, I'm the one who came up with the biggest scientific breakthrough in the movie.
Oh, really?
If you go back a couple years. What's that?
Is it a spoiler, or can you talk about it?
Well, I won't present it in that way. But no, if you go back a few years to when we were writing the script, if you Googled the condition, every single thing you found online said it was this one gene that caused it, the NTRK1, I believe.
Okay.
And
so it is a real condition.
Yeah, it's a real medical condition.
It is a real condition. Yeah.
And that's why it took so long to write it, because it was so important to me to be as accurate as possible.
Right.
And because I hate movies where they're just like skimming over the science or it's all bullshit. Like I just can't do that. But while I was in China, actually, I found this one article where this guy was saying, hey, well, maybe it's that gene for 60% of the people, but maybe it's this other gene that looks the same, but it's a little different for this other 40%. Okay. And I showed it, and I was looking for this breakthrough in the script. I was really struggling. My science advisors were like, we've used everything. Like, there's nothing left. There's no light bulb moment left for him to have. And I found this article, and I sent it to my science advisor. And he was like, this is amazing. Like, this is it. And that became a huge plot point in the movie. But what's really interesting now, if you go and Google the condition, every single thing you find will say it's this new SCN9A gene.
Wow.
Like there's nothing going back to the original. So the theory switched. Yeah, it's very interesting.
So you cured a disease then?
my science advisor thinks he got close, but I don't think we actually cured anything.
Crazy. So. Well, good researching.
Yeah, but that was the hardest part of writing the script, was research.
Yeah. What do you find the most enjoyable part about making a film? For
me, it's being on set. I feel like everything is about getting to that point where I'm on set. I feel like the writing takes forever, and it's that banging your head against the wall kind of feeling. Pre-production takes forever. Money keeps showing up and disappearing. The editing and the post production is this huge annoying thing too. And though there are fun moments in the editing room, but the actual post production process is really tedious. And then after post production, you're trying to sell the movie. That's just like this awful process to deal with. But the actual
Yeah.
being on set is what it's all about for me. It's when I feel like
Mm.
my best self. I feel like the most present in life. I feel like the most alive. I feel like that's kind of what I'm trying to be here to do. I feel
Yeah.
like, and also I feel like, all through pre-production, you're fighting for like certain toys, right? You're fighting for actors, you're fighting for crew, you're fighting for tools, like different like cranes and dollies and things. But
Yeah.
once you're on set, it's like, okay, this is what you have to play with. Now go play, go make something.
Mm.
And all those conversations they're meaningless at this point. It's just like, what can I do with what I have?
Right.
And that's what it's all about. I wish that was a longer part of it. It sucks that
Mm.
like you can spend 3 years working on a movie and the actual production is 4 weeks. I wish it was the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It is what it is.
Have you ever directed theater or ever wanted?
No, never. I've never done theater.
No, it was funny because I was thinking today, I'm not suggesting this, but I was just thinking I could see Painless as a play.
Interesting.
I think if, it just struck me as something could be put on stage. But
That's interesting. It would work as a play for sure. Like technically, like there's not that many crazy locations that
yeah,
you can easily
exactly.
condense them. Yeah,
Yeah. And
interesting idea.
what's the name of the actor who plays the lead?
Joey Klein.
Yeah, I thought he was really interesting. I thought he was
Yeah,
a
he's
really
good.
interesting guy.
He's definitely got an intensity about him.
Was it hard to find the right guy to play him?
Everything about making this movie was hard. The
So it
casting
was
was
painful, not painless.
yeah.
Okay.
I like to say I jinxed myself the minute I called it painless. Because there was nothing easy about this movie. No, but finding the right actors in particular was difficult because believe it or not, we are a super small budget. It doesn't. I'm not saying it looks like the biggest budget in the world, but I think it looks a lot bigger than it is.
Right.
And one of my biggest concerns from the get-go was I knew because this is an intense drama, it lived and died by the acting. Nothing screams crappy independent movie more than like seeing a bad actor.
Mm.
We didn't have a lot of money to pay anybody, but we like scoured the earth for the right actor. We did casting calls in Rhode Island, Boston, New York. We did Skype auditions in LA, Canada. I mean, we spent 6 months casting the film.
Wow.
And it wasn't until very late in the process that we got Joey. We got him out of Canada. He's from Toronto.
Oh,
We
okay.
got Evelina Marie, who plays Shaney. We got her out of LA, also on a Skype call. So Skype kind of allowed this movie to happen. But we had it was very difficult. I'd say the two hardest roles to cast by far though were Joey, who plays Henry, and Evelina, who plays Shaney.
Yeah. They had a nice chemistry.
Yeah, they did. It was great. I was super, super happy with how that came out. It's funny because we were also for Shaney's character, we were just looking everywhere, and I was actually meeting some pretty good actresses who could probably pull it off, but there was like this certain something that you can't define that I wasn't feeling,
Yeah.
and I remember it was really late in the process too, and we had this. I feel kind of bad, but because we were in this casting office and we had these actors outside waiting to audition, and somebody put a laptop in my lap and they're like, "Watch this," and they played Ev's reel, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is exactly what I'm looking for!" Like she has that thing in spades.
Mm.
So, and then the girl who showed it to me, she's like, "Oh, we have to see this actress," and I was like, "Why? Like,
Yeah.
why bother?" Or like
Yeah.
I already knew where the part was going. Of course, I was nice and I auditioned her,
Yeah.
but immediately after, I was like, "Call Ev in LA and let's get her on the phone and see if she'll do this."
Yeah. Yeah. Nicely done. So, so you've taken it to 4 different festivals, you said?
Uh,
So far?
We've taken it to a few festivals. I don't remember the number. I think we have 4 coming up.
Oh, 4 coming up. Okay, right,
Yeah, yeah.
right,
We premiered in March at a great festival called CineQuest in San Jose,
right.
and actually we won the New Vision Award, which is great.
Cool.
It's hard, it's tough when you make these things, especially when you spend so much time with them. You feel really good about it, and you're getting good feedback from people that have seen it, but it's not until you see it in front of an audience that you really know where you stand.
Yeah.
It wasn't until that.
Sorry, what's that like? I mean, because God, the amount of work that goes into like writing, directing, producing a feature film is huge, and so like the first time you see it in front of an audience, what's that like?
It's a little nerve-wracking because you're sick to death of your movie. Like, it's beyond sick. You're like, you've seen it 1,000 times. At least I have.
Yeah.
I've seen it more times than you should, though, because I'm doing a lot of roles that if we had a better budget, I wouldn't be doing. Like QCing it and checking all these things. But anyway, you're sick to death of the movie. You don't even know what you're looking. You've lost a lot of objectivity. You don't even know what you're looking at anymore.
Yeah.
You think you made something pretty good, but you're not really sure. It could be a total stinker, and you don't even know. You've gotten decent feedback from your friends and colleagues who've seen it, but and so first of all, getting into a festival is a huge like, oh my God, maybe this isn't like a total piece of garbage,
Yeah, yeah.
And then when you screen, I was on pins and needles because I didn't know how it was going to play at all, and my DP who shot the movie, he's like, I don't know what we did here. Is this going to be good? Is this going to suck? Like, he didn't know either. And we played it, and the audience just loved it. They were hinging on every joke hit, every dramatic moment hit. There was no uncomfortable squffling in the seats. That is the worst sign you could have is when people start.
I shuffled a couple times. I think with the mice. There was a moment with the mouse.
Oh, well, yeah, but that's like more like a squirming. It's like a
that's
squirming.
That's squirming.
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean like the shuffling where it's like you just know they're getting bored.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
If somebody checks their watch, you're dead. You're screwed. But the greatest thing about it is the first time you see it in front of an audience, something happens to you where you're seeing your movie again for the first time. You're just seeing it with these fresh eyes because you're feeling the energy of the audience. Yeah. And it was great. They loved it. We got a standing ovation. We won an award. So it was kind of like off to the races at that point.
That must have felt good.
It did, yeah. It was a huge.
And when can people see that, or do we know yet?
Well, we don't know exactly yet. Like I was saying, we have a few festivals we're playing at that are coming up. We're playing in Whistler, Canada, Anchorage, Alaska, Houston, Texas. We have a screening actually in LA next week. And then we'll see. We have a sales agent shopping it around to distributors right now.
Right.
And hopefully in the next 4 to 6 months, it'll be, playing in some theaters or, on Netflix, things like that.
Yeah. Nice. And do you have, are you working on something now? Are you writing something? Do you have any ideas for what's next?
I'm definitely writing a project. I'm pretty deep into the brainstorming part of it. I haven't actually sat down and started like writing dialogue and stuff yet, but it's going well, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be something really unique. I'm pretty far along with that. And
does it have any similarities to Painless, or is it?
It's not science related. I would say all my movies are they have autobiographical things in them. There's definitely things about Painless that are ripped right from my life. I can feel pain, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But just in terms of the character, and this also expresses a lot of things that I've gone through, but he's a very different character, and it's a very different movie. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, it's still early in the process. So.
Yeah.
One thing I've learned is the script never turns out like you imagine it in your head when you sit down and write. So.
Yeah. Just to go back for a quick second, just picking up on something you just said. I can't remember the character's name in Painless. What's the central character's name?
Henry.
Henry, of course. What would you say the similarities between you and Henry are?
Well, he's very focused on his work, to a fault, right? Like the big line for Henry in the movie, every time something comes along, he's like, I don't have time for distractions.
Yeah.
He's basically made this decision that he's going to be locked in this room and he's not going to come out till he has what he's looking for, which is in his head, this cure so he can feel normal, right? Which to me, that was kind of like writing every day for like forever, every day locked in a room, sitting at a computer where everybody's out playing or living a life.
Yeah.
Seasons are going by. And it's like, I'm not coming out of this room. I would just start saying no to everything. I'm like, I have to do this because it was holding me back in my career. And it's just like, I'm not coming out of this room until I have a script. And so I can definitely relate, and to a fault. I think, you got to live your life too at a certain point. So I relate to that. I relate to some of the loneliness he was going through and the feeling of urban isolation. Like, Henry, it's a Manhattan story. He lives in a big city, but he feels very alone, even though he's surrounded by people. And I think that's something a lot of people relate to. I had this idea when I was this is several years ago, and I think people at a certain age really relate to that. So, yeah, in those respects, I definitely can relate to the struggle he was going through.
How do you stay? What do you think? What am I trying to say here? What drives you? Do you think?
I mean, without trying to sound hokey or something, honestly, it's just a passion for, I get these ideas. I mean, these are really hard films to do. I don't have like a ton of funding or anything or access to people, like big time people that can get things done. They're really hard to do. They take a lot out of you. They kind of age you in dog years. Yeah. I would be having a lot more fun in my life if I was off, working a 9-to-5 job and then having, my nights and weekends free to do whatever I want, go traveling or whatever. But, honestly, it's just this, I get this idea in my head. I'm walking down the street, this idea pops in my head, like, oh, it'd be a cool story. And then it's literally an obsession. And that's the other thing I relate to with Henry. He's so obsessed. And it literally becomes this obsession. And it's just, I get so excited about the idea I want to tell. I'm not trying to do it for any other reason than like I'm just so excited about it. I don't know if it's gonna suck. I don't know if I'll ever be able to make a script out of it or tell a movie out of it or people will like it. But I'm just so excited about it, and it's just like I have to do this for me. It goes back to when I was like in college or out of college making these short films. Like most of my shorts I wasn't submitting to festivals or anything. I was just making them and then going on and making another one because it was like I was expressing something that I felt I had to express, and I try to not lose sight of that ever, even if it's a bigger project with more money and more at stake. I try to always hold on to that aspect of it.
Was there the point in filming Painless or Angel of Nanjing? Was there ever a point where you thought about stopping, or was that ever an option, or?
There was definitely not for the documentary. There was so many points in Painless where there was just so many problems, there's so many fires going on that we could have been stopped at any moment. We would almost lose an actor. We would almost lose a set. Our money ran out. Like, I literally am not joking when I say that the movie was cursed. Like, literally, I mean, seriously, we had a guy, actually, it's a sad story, but our first day of location scouting, the first time me, my DP, and my production designer were ever together in a van, driving around looking at locations, we saw a guy have a heart attack on the street, and actually he passed away. And I felt like it put some kind of curse on the production. And I told my DP, like 6 months later, like, I felt like this movie was cursed. And he's like, honestly, I feel like every independent movie's cursed because you're doing something as a filmmaker you shouldn't be able to do. Like, it's way beyond your reach.
Yeah.
And there's just so many moments like that where it could have stopped. So I never wanted to stop it. I felt like probably I'm the only reason, not to gloat in any way, but I'm probably the big reason, me and my DP, that it didn't stop, because we were just taking on so much extra stuff, doing whatever we had to do at all times to get through the day and just make it to the next, not even the day, make it to the next scene and the next location. It's such a battle. And I couldn't allow myself to think like that at all. Another thing that I've learned about being on a movie is the worst thing you can have is any negativity. whether it's from you or even a crew member, even the smallest crew member, like a production assistant, any negativity, it's like a cancer. It just starts spreading. And, you know, we had one actor who was being kind of negative and talking trash and stuff. And I had to say, dude, you can't do that. Like I saw it spreading like this plague. You know, all of a sudden I'd be in the bathroom and I'd hear a couple crew members starting to talk shit. And I'm like, dude, you're starting that and it's spreading. You need to like refocus your thought and stay positive and stay focused on the work. And
nice.
I believe that, like, full-heartedly. Like, no matter what production I'm on, I'll never allow anyone to openly talk negative about it.
Right. So, a couple of questions I need to ask you. If you could meet anyone, living or dead,
Oof.
Who would that be?
That's a long list. Well, living, I would have to say my favorite filmmaker, Dan Aronofsky. Yeah. I actually did meet him once, but I don't really think it counts because I obviously remember meeting him, but I don't think he would ever remember meeting me. Okay. So I would like to meet him when I'm at a point in my career where he might actually mean something to him. Mm-hmm. And the reason I want to meet him is not only is he my favorite filmmaker, but I just feel like we get each other like in a certain way. Like his work speaks to me on a certain level where he's doing a lot of things that I would want to do, and he seems like the type of guy I'd want to get a beer with. Right. He doesn't seem too uptight. He doesn't seem too full of himself. I just feel like it'd be a really awesome, amazing conversation, and I would come out a much smarter person.
Mm. What would you like to ask him?
What's that?
Is there a question that you would like to ask him?
Yeah, just walk me through the process of being on set. How do you approach directing and blocking and choosing your camera angles? And I just saw Mother, and I was so blown away by his choice of doing such a subjective camera. And I don't know, did you see the movie?
I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to. I got to gear up for it. I hear it's pretty intense.
It's not that. It's not like that. It's intense, but not in like a uncomfortable way. It's like fun intense.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot. The movie's a lot more fun than they let you believe. It's not like this. I mean, it's got some moments in it, but it's not as like uncomfortable. It's not like Requiem for a Dream where you're looking at like open needle holes and stuff. Right, it's not that kind of. It's a different kind of intensity.
Oh, okay.
But the whole thing is shot in this beautiful subjective way where you're always with the character. And he did something with sound design I've never seen done before, ever. That really puts you inside the character's head. And I just asking him about those decisions to do that, and what are some of the problems he runs into on set, and how does he tackle them? I think he'd be a wealth of knowledge,
Yeah.
And he's a great environmentalist, which I really respect. And it'd be an interesting conversation, to say the least. If nothing else.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks for your time. This was great. This was a fun interview. I'm glad we got to do it.
Thanks, man.